example that everyone should follow.
I
And
agree.
I
I
thank
agree.
Senator Mullin. You've added so much to the committee already.
You'll get over it soon.
With that, let me recognize for 5 minutes Senator Blumenthal. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not going to use any of my 5 minutes to comment on in reaction. Thank you all for being here. This has been very, very helpful and enlightening. I've been to Kyiv 3 times in the past year, and every time I go, I am so deeply moved and impressed by the resolve and resilience of the Ukrainian people, which I think at the end of the day is the reason that they will win. Because as President Zelensky told me during one of my visits with him, they'll fight to the last person, and they will fight with pitchforks if they need to do it. And I have supported his requests for the javelins and stingers, and then for long-range artillery and still longer-range artillery, the ATACMS, not just the HIMARS, for the tanks that he needs, not just the Bradley and Stryker vehicles, but the Leopards and the Challengers, and now for the fighter aircraft. But as important as those munitions and artillery and other hardware are, I think the morale and determination of the people of Ukraine is equally important. And in that connection, I have worked with Senator Graham to support designating Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. Every time I've met with President Zelensky, he has mentioned it. In fact, when we brought to him a copy of the resolution passed unanimously by the United States Senate asking the administration to designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, his face alighted. We presented him to with the resolution in July, Senator Graham and I. It has meaning to the people of Ukraine. Would you agree with me that Russia should be designated a state sponsor of terrorism?
I would actually have to say with regret that I would not. And let me just elaborate why. Because I think that what we really need to do is to be able to persuade other countries in the global south and elsewhere that it's very important for them to support Ukraine and to push back against Russian aggression there. And we have to focus this on what Russia has done to violate Ukraine's territorial integrity. I think once you put it into that designation, you then start to have a lot of countries pull back from any support that they might have given, because the consequences of that will be them questioning whether that's going to happen to them as well. We have many other conflicts around the world. We have Saudi Arabia's attacks on Yemen, for example, and many others where I would hesitate to think that we would apply that designation. What we have to do when we look at this is to see where we can actually use the precedent of whatever action we take. There's one other element that I do want to point out, though, that we should be making very clear that the United States, along with the United Kingdom, have a special role in supporting Ukraine because of the agreements that we had in 1994 to support Ukraine's territorial integrity, sovereignty, independence when we pushed them to give up nuclear weapons. One thing we haven't mentioned on this panel is the proliferation challenge that we now face because of this. So I do think that we, the United States, along with the United Kingdom and others, should be stressing continuously how important it is to support Ukraine. But I'm afraid that with regret, I would hesitate taking this step.
How about the Wagner Group? Would you agree with me that we should designate the Wagner Group as a terrorist a foreign terrorist organization?
I think that would fall into that category. I think with the Wagner Group and other paramilitary formations, we definitely can discuss this. I mean, the atrocious acts that they're undertaking. They've actually attacked special forces of the United States in Deir ez-Zor in Syria in 2018.
So you would distinguish?
I would distinguish Wagner. It's the actions of particular groups under that state rubric.
Let me ask you, over the course of this year, the prospect of potential escalation by Putin has been raised as a reason not to provide each of these weapons platforms as we've gone along. And I've said the danger of escalation has been vastly overestimated. Just as we've underestimated the capability of the Ukrainian forces, we've overestimated or exaggerated Putin's potential for escalating. Could you give me your thoughts about whether we are close to that escalation point, whether it would be triggered by the fourth-generation fighter aircraft that now we're urging be provided?
I want to cede some of this to Dr. Zakheim, but I just want to make it very clear. Putin escalates all the time. Sending 500,000 extra people, 300,000 extra people to the front is an escalation. We are seeing a lot of caution, as we mentioned earlier, about crossing over into NATO territory, because he doesn't want to have a full-on kinetic war with NATO. But I don't think that actually specific choices of equipment are really germane to this debate.
I agree with Dr. Hill, and I think the point here is, what is the platform going to be used for? Why is it necessary? That is the question that should animate decision-making, with the emphasis on urgency and speed. And I agree with you, Senator. I think fighter aircraft, ones that this Congress has authorized the U.S. military not to use anymore, that could easily be sent over there, could have a material impact on the fight within the sovereign territory of Ukraine.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.